welcome to this episode of the YAHOWAH blog. If you notice that I was turned stage right, which I guess is to the left from the camera angle, this is our first attempt for me to be both your host and also assistant producer of this episode of the YAHOWAH blog, which is on part 9 of Qatsyr-Harvest, as we consider everything that can be known and learned about the upcoming Shabuah ingathering of the covenant family, on behalf of YAHOWAH's mission to rescue, to reintroduce himself, and to return to his people. And so the computer that is now running the show is just off to my right, and I'm attempting to do both today. We'll see how many hats your host can wear and still be quasi-functional and attempt to be literate. The statement that we were considering from YAHOWAH at the conclusion of our 8th episode of the Shabuah harvest read as follows: "And you should announce an invitation to meet in association with this essential day. It exists as a set-apart mikre, an invitation to be called out and meet for you to approach." This is YAHOWAH speaking directly through Moshe. In fact, to take YAHOWAH at his word, which I think we should view this as YAHOWAH using Moshe's mouth. He said he was going to do so. He is speaking directly to us through him. Prior to this, YAHOWAH was even willing, in addition to educating Moshe on the summit of Mount Torah, as to the beginnings of his relationship with his people, dictating, if you will, all of Barashith to him at that time. Then as they engaged and he was telling his story with YAHOWAH, beginning in Shemoth Exodus, we are now at the point that we have returned to Mount Torah, and YAHOWAH now is revealing this story to his people through Moshe, and therefore to us. And the difference here is that rather than the audience being those who had lived some time ago, Abraham and Sarah, Yishak, as well as Jacob, the children of Israel, and their wives, and even telling the story of what occurred in the garden with Adam and Chawah, and again later with Noah. We are now in a part of this story where YAHOWAH has gathered the children of Israel around him. He has rescued them from the religious and political abuse they were enduring in Mitzrayim, the crucibles of religious and political oppression, known today as Egypt. And so the audience has broadened here, but YAHOWAH is still speaking through this man, just as he did to the Pharaoh and to the Egyptians through Moshe when he was in the process of liberating his children. As we know, YAHOWAH made an attempt, I think just to prove a point, to speak directly to Israel, to demonstrate to the children of Israel that he had just drug kicking and screaming out of slavery, that he was indeed the voice speaking through Moshe, and that the Torah he was revealing, this guidance he was revealing, came directly from him as the creator God of the universe. So he asked Moshe to prepare and gather his people, to clean them up, if you will, and make them, have them be present for this meeting. And what part of him he was projecting, probably projecting his nephesh, perhaps some of his ruach, using a metaphor of fiery light to convey his presence. And with a booming voice, he spoke directly to the children of Israel, ever so briefly. And their response was, "Whoa, no, that's way too much for us. We don't need this this communication, this up close and personal. Would you please go away and not speak to us again? Now, probably not the most endearing thing they could have said to the God who just rescued them and had chosen them and their fathers before them and was offering to take them to the promised land and do all manner of wonderful things for them. So, on a 1 to 10 scale of intelligence, this was a religious response, subtard, to use the correct terminology. And so that means that Yahowah, from this point on, including what we're doing here today, speaks through individuals of his preparation and choice. And just as he spoke these words through Moshe, he is now bringing your attention to them through Yada. So let's consider what he said, because it's vitally important. And this message is to Yisrael, to the children of Yisrael, to the descendants of Abraham, Yishak, and Jacob. The rest of us have the opportunity to listen in, but this message is to God's people. And they haven't been listening. So it's time for a change. He said, you should announce an invitation to meet. That is a kara. He is going to do what God is masterful at doing. He's going to introduce the verb that explains the title that is among the most important in all of the universe. And he's going to do that collaboratively so that we would understand precisely what he's talking about. It is, in the case of Kara and Mikra, which follows, it is very much like he did with Torah and Yara. Yara is the actionable root of Torah. It means source from which guidance, instructions, directions, and teaching flow. That is what Yara means. It is the basis of Torah. Therefore, that is what Torah means. Kara defines Mikra. The only addition to Kara that we find in Mikra is the meh or ma sound. Meh and ma in Hebrew are interrogatories. That's a fancy word. It suggests that what follows is being presented as something that you should ponder, that you should question, that you should think about, that you should solicit answers regarding. So it means to ponder the implications of Kara. Kara has been defined here, and I will share now an amplified translation of Kara so that you appreciate its full implications. Kara means to announce an invitation or to render a summons. Slightly different. An invitation is to a party, and in this case, they're invitations to a party. If, however, you don't attend these parties and you're going to be judged by Yahowah as a result of not availing yourself of them, then it is a summons to meet, and he's the judge. You can take it either way. It's your choice how you will encounter Kara as it relates to Yahowah. An invitation to meet with him 7 times a year, to enjoy the path that he has provided, to the relationship he is offering through the covenant, or to be summoned for a trial. Your option. So it means to announce an invitation and to be presented with a summons. It is to be encouraged to read and recite, which is the best way to differentiate between whether or not you are going to accept the invitation or be summoned, particularly when you read and recite the Torah and prophets of Yahowah. It also means to call out. So it's to call out to somebody by name, to proclaim their name, to make an announcement in this regard. And the announcement is to meet. And since the one making the announcement is God, it is to meet with God. And since it also means to call out, we are being called out of the world by name, by Yahowah, for the purpose of us responding to his invitation to attend his 7th annual Moed Mikre, so that we can be part of his covenant family and participate in the harvest and ultimately camp out with Yahowah forevermore, beginning on Sukkah. These invitations comprise Pesach, Matzah, Bakodim, which were fulfilled by David, in 33 CE, which is year 4000 Yah, Shabuah, which is the subject of this series of programs, which is the next upcoming harvest. It is a Qatsyr, which is why we've defined this program as such. And all of the beneficiaries of this harvest we have already determined, based upon Yahweh's previous testimony, are those who have availed themselves Pesach, Matzah, and particularly Bakodim. The next, that is the harvest, by the way, that sits in the middle. I have over my left shoulder here. Probably should use my left hand to point to it, but there's a menorah up here, and you'll notice that the first 3 candles, lights on that menorah, they are oil lamps, they are not candles, but of the first 3 oil lamps on that menorah, they address the first 3 Moed Mikre that David, our Messiah, the Son of God, our returning King, has fulfilled. The one in the middle is the one that is upcoming. It is the only one not in year 4000 Yah, 33 CE, or year 6000 Yah in 2033. It stands 7 years apart, which is why it is called sevens. Shabuah means sevens. So it is one of the 7, but it's the 7 that stands 7 years apart from the final 3. The last 3 are Towrah, Kippurim, and Sukkah, and they will be fulfilled in order, beginning with the first day of the 7th month on Yahweh's calendar in year 6000 Yah, the 120th Yobel year. So this is the order of things and what he is specifically talking about in terms of the invitations. Now, he's saying that this announcement regarding the invitation to meet, the basis of Mikra, is in association with this essential day. Not every one of Yahweh's Moed Mikre is presented as a stem, essential. Many are. Matzah, for example, is the first one that Yahweh throws every word that he's got to tell you. It's special. I mean, from it's a special Sabbath to it's Kodesh, it's set apart. It is a stem. It is essential for us. It is everything that Yahweh can say. It is, not only a mikra, it's a moed. It's just everything that Yahweh could address to tell us that matzah is essential to us. He does, but he's reminding us that this day is essential. Shabuah is essential. Now, when we read something like that, if we just read through it and don't think about it, we don't gain anything from it. Okay, it's an important day. I'm going to be there. God issued an invitation. The least I can do is accept it. Okay, here I am, God. Here are my 2 loaves. What do we do next? You think he would have called it essential if that was the response he was soliciting? Oh, okay, then I really want to know what day I have to celebrate it on. I want to make sure that I'm lifting and waving my loaves the right way. Could you explain it to me so I know what I need to do? You know how many emails I've received like that? You think he would have called it essential if he wanted you to ask me to give you a personal, private explanation as to what you should do? Or because here he used kara, which is the definition of mikra, and the mikra are the 7 steps home. Does he want you to recognize there's something essential about this one that he does not want us to miss? Do you want to take the time to think about it? Do you care? Do Does this relationship with Yahowah mean enough to you that you're going to invest the time to learn the truth, understand it, and then once you understand it, join us in sharing it so that more people can benefit and so that you're equipped to help us? Why is this day essential? Well, let's begin. Pesach is essential because if you're not immortal, if the door to heaven is not opened, the door to life is not opened, then you're just going to die. Your soul lives its period of time, which could be anywhere from a miscarriage and you never get out of the womb, all the way up to, what is about 120 years, I guess, is the absolute limit on human mortality. There you go. You got your life, you lived it, it's all over. Without Pesach, there is no tomorrow after your mortal death. So I would say that's probably essential. It's a really good idea to become immortal if you're going to spend time with an immortal being like Yahowah. So we'll check that off. That's essential. We ought to understand how the sacrifice that Dod made as the sacrificial lamb, the Pesach El, opens the doorway to life by everything that we can discern about it by studying the Torah and prophets, and then capitalize on the gift. But we also should know that the most essential day, the Kodesh Mikre, the one that is really set apart and important, that is celebrated as a 7-day celebration of our relationship with Yahowah, of which Pesach is actually integrated into and is just part of, is matzah. And since Yahowah tells it's essential, why don't we just reemphasize why it is essential? Because being eternal, without having our souls expunged of religious and political, conspiratorial, and militant, pro-military kinds of corruptions, means that we're going to spend our eternity separated from Yahowah. That place is called Sheol. It's known as hell. That's probably a really bad option. Making matzah the most essential day. To do as is presented in Judaism and in Christianity, and to try to observe Passover and not matzah is soul suicide. It's the worst outcome possible. It's the dumbest thing you could possibly do. I mean, the very basis of Christianity, where their crude counterfeit and mythical misnomer, Jesus Christ, who is just modeled after, very crudely modeled after the actual Messiah and Son of God, David, who actually did these things. They have him dying on a Roman cross on Passover without identifying that he is the Passover lamb. But nonetheless, if you were to figure out why it was Passover, that he was there, and you were to try to capitalize on it, and you don't observe matzah, which is the case of Judaism and in Christianity, then you've just sentenced your own soul to an eternity in Sheol, because you're now immortal. You still have all of that religious and political crap slathering, stinking up your soul. Can't get into heaven. So we're going to chalk up matzah as essential. This is the day that after Dod's Bashar, corporal body, served as the Pesach El, the Passover lamb, opening the door to life, and his body was then incinerated that night. And in keeping with the Torah, good riddance. It had been beaten to a pulp. It wasn't worth anything at that point. It had served its purpose. Dod's nefesh soul, so Dod did not die in his second life. His nefesh soul went on to be burdened with the guilt of every covenant member on behalf of all Yisrael. And he carried that guilt with him to the place of separation, the equivalent of a black hole in Sheol, to deposit it there where it can never be seen again, never associated with us, so we look perfect in God's eyes. That's essential. This leads to the prerequisite for Shabuah, which is Bikurim. And since Shabuah is a harvest of Bikurim, that would make Bikurim also essential, because you're not going to participate and benefit from Shabuah unless you also benefit from and attend Bikurim. So Bikurim is the third day of the celebration, the Chog Matzah, which is another one of the terms that Yahweh uses to describe matzah. It is a celebration of the relationship and of life. It's Chog Matzah. Chog Matzah includes Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim. So on Bikurim, we recognize that the firstborn, the Bikor of Yahowah, Dod David, signed our adoption papers when his soul left Sheol and returned to his father, Yahowah in heaven. That's why Yahowah says of Dod, I am his father, he is my son. And he says it 3 times because Dod lived 3 lives. He's lived 2, he will live a 3rd. And therefore, Bikurim represents our adoption into God's family, following the firstborn son of Yah there. Opens the door to life, perfects our souls, enables our adoption into God's family. Then there are 2 references to being enriched and empowered. We are enriched and empowered by being adopted into God's family, even in this life. But God must enrich us and empower us to an infinite extent from that point for our souls to jettison these physical bodies, which are huge limitations to us, and become spiritual and energy-based beings akin to light, where our soul resides within a form of energy as opposed to a physical body. And so we have to be, and Shabuah does this, enriched again. Now, while that would be essential for us to make this transition from mortal to immortal and in God's presence, is to be enriched and empowered again during the Shabuah harvest, transformed into light, which is the whole metaphor of fire and why fire, and there are offerings made by fire is part of this Moed Mikra. It's to show you that decaying physical life can be transformed into energy and light that rises up to heaven. From life to light is the message. And so that's rather essential. And that could be by itself enough to explain why this day was called a stem. A stem means a skeletal. Our skeleton enables us to stand up. It enables us me to gesture here. It is why I can move my fingers and type and write. And it is how my head stays on top of my neck, on top of my shoulders. And, our skeleton is essential. Our very bones are essential to the functioning of and our purpose here. And it is also means substantial, foundational. Now, I have suggested, and I'm extrapolating this from the text, God communicates in a way, as all good teachers, where he gives us enough information that once we come to know it and own that information, we've transferred it into our long-term memories. And then we begin making connections with a broader spectrum of information that he has provided, and we make the necessary connections to understand the common denominators and the themes between them. Then we can put the pieces of the puzzle that he has provided us to figure out together and can see the bigger picture. And in this regard, it is my deduction that there is a even more essential aspect of Shabuah. And it covers a number of areas. One is the Shabuah harvest being set apart 7 years. Look back on the menorah, it's the one in the middle, being set apart 7 years from the last 3, being called sevens to give us that clue, is therefore highly likely, by deduction, the beginning of the 7-year period of the time of Israel's troubles. And as bad as things are for God's people now, and it is heartbreaking to see progressives and Muslims align in their vicious attempts to dehumanize and degrade Jews, far worse than anything that happened in Europe in the 1920s. Vastly more people, I mean, by many times the magnitude of people. And it's not just centered in one area of the world around Germany and throughout Europe, but pervasive throughout the entire world, including all of those nations surrounding Israel and all of the most powerful nations, again, in Europe and the United States, even now in South America and many throughout Asia, that are clamoring for Israel's annihilation, siding with the perpetrators of rape and mass murder, abduction, and torture against their victims. It's heartbreaking. And it's heartbreaking to read the prophets, and they will tell us that 1,000 times worse than what happened on 10/7/23 is going to happen again. God is compassionate. He loves his family. He does not want his covenant family to endure that. So, those who have accepted the invitations and have capitalized upon Pesach, Matzah, and Bakurim so that they're prepared for Shavuot, this is the day that God's saying, you are my family. I'm not going to have you endure what's going to happen. He is not causing what is going to happen, but he has witnessed it, and he knows what's going to happen. And he also knows that if this were not to happen, he would never get the full attention of his people, because his people need to be pushed into a place where they recognize their politicians, their military, and their rabbis cannot save them. And that finally they relent and turn back to Yahowah. So, well, that must endure and will endure. The fact of the matter is that Yahowah is compassionate. He doesn't want his family to have to witness it, to be part of it, to even to die during it. So this is why that harvest exists. I've also suggested, and I think it holds true, that this harvest is significant because it is our Shabbatical. It is for at least myself, it is a 3.5-year time to not only recharge, to be properly prepared for what's going to come. And Yahowah not only wants his witness, his final witness, along with Elia, energized and prepared and really transformed, becoming vastly more effective, so that when he returns on the 1st of Abib in 2030 with Elia, that we do the best job possible, and not only protecting Yisrael, but equipping Yisrael with the knowledge that Israelites need to embrace Yahweh's name, to become reacquainted with their Messiah and King, Dod, before his arrival, and to rectify their embittered revolt against God and join the covenant. And so that's going to take some doing. I can tell you that having devoted myself every waking hour for 23 years now to this, knowing that I have another 15 months to go, probably 1,000 of these Yahowah blogs to present, I am probably going to need that break. As much as Yahowah has boosted my endurance and my capability in sharing this message with you, with the 7 spirits afforded my role as choder, my Father knows what our current limits are. And he also knows that some of these things just need to happen, and they're going to happen, and Israel has to become more receptive before enough listen to make a tremendous difference. Now, the other reason is that YAHOWAH must ensure that there is a significant, meaningful, important gathering of his people who are receptive to him, who have embraced his name, his son, and what his son has done for us, who have returned to accept the conditions of the covenant, who are aware of what's going to happen on Yom Kippurim in year 6000 Yah, as the sun sets 6:22 p.m., October 2nd, 2033, and Jerusalem, when he returns. That return must be along with and in conjunction with the covenant family, and must be attended by his people. By removing us at this time, he ensures that result. And I think that's part of it. Now, there will be other opportunities. There is also the upcoming Towrah-Harvest in 2033 to the backdrop of a full solar eclipse. There is the actual return on Yom Kippurim that year, 10 days later, and that we all enter a time to camp out with YAHOWAH for 1,000 years here on earth to celebrate the millennial Shabat celebration of Sukkah. So for all of these reasons, I think this day is essential. Now, why does it read, you should make an announcement regarding this invitation to meet? Who's speaking? Who is being spoken to? Are we to see this as Moshe speaking? Are we to see this as YAHOWAH speaking? Is Moshe speaking through YAHOWAH speaking through Moshe? Who is he speaking to? Israel didn't do this. If he was speaking to Israel, Israel did not make this announcement. So who is? Shouldn't be difficult to figure out either, should it? Because this is the first time that this announcement has been brought to your attention in this way. Now, I won't be the only one. There are others in the covenant family who are joining me and helping me broadcast this announcement to you. There are also a time forthcoming, just now 4 years from now, when Elia will return and join me in announcing all of this. However, it's hard to include Elia on this one. Why? Because the day that's now essential is he's talking about a Shabuah. The fulfillment of Shabuah will be 3.5 years past before Elia returns. So this is another way that YAHOWAH has written the role that I've been asked to play right into his Torah. And he's done so because not only does he want me to figure it out so that I can do as he has requested, but that when I do, you listen, then respond appropriately. No one has ever made this announcement to you. No one has ever explained what is occurring until now. God continued. It exists as Haya. Haya is the basis of YAHOWAH's name. It's the most important verb in the Hebrew lexicon. Because verbs in Hebrew are not stuck in time, as is the case in English with a past, present, and future. The verb means was, is, and will be. So it was, it is, and it always will be a Kodesh, a set-apart mikre, invitation to be called out and meet. Kodesh, another of the top 10 words in the Hebrew lexicon for you to understand. Kara is, part of that top 10 too. Maybe I'm going to have a top 10 that includes 20, but shoot me if I'm exuberant in this, or if that I love the words, the palette that Yahowah chose to paint his picture. Kodesh is one of those words. It is almost always rendered holy, which is a religious term dating back to Babylon, and Bible translations, whether they be the JPS Tanakh or any one of the seemingly endless array of Christian publications. Who knows why Christians carry around what they call the Old Testament, the Torah, prophets, and Psalms. Their religion contradicts it in every possible way. But it's a wonder that even Jews pay any attention to the Torah, since they have plastered over it with their Talmud, and it is the basis of their religion. Well, this exists as something that is not holy, but is set apart. Now, set apart is a concept. It can be interpreted in one of two ways. That means that something can be set apart from Yahowah, which means that it is part of Yahowah's nature that can be seen set apart from him for a particular purpose. Like Yahowah's nature includes a ruach and a nephesh, both of which Yahowah can project to accomplish his purpose. Yahowah is by nature light energy, and therefore he can set apart some of his light energy to project his presence. So it can be set apart from Yahowah. A part of Yahowah doesn't make Yahowah multiple parts. It just means this is part of the nature of Yahowah that he can project. But in most cases, that really isn't the intent of what set apart is conveying. And I don't think it means that here, although clearly this mikra belongs to Yahowah. It isn't a Jewish holiday. Set apart means that it is uniquely important, that it is wholly uncommon, that it is special. Now, when you consider those things that are common, when you consider those things that are prevalent in humankind, the simple message there is, my wife is holding up a sign she wants me to read, but it's way too long for me to look up and to try to process it at this time. But I'm hoping maybe if I miss something, she will serve as a producer here and give it to me in a more finite manner that I can process. When I do these programs, I'm capitalizing on something that I've uniquely been able to do for some time. Not a lot of people have this ability, and maybe it's one of the things that Yah found useful. But I can do multiple things at the same time. Very few people can read and speak at the same time, particularly if what they're saying is not entirely consistent with what they're reading. I can plan ahead of where we're going and think about where we have come from while in the moment and sharing this message with you. I can think about how we are broadcasting and how you are receiving this while conveying the message to you, and how this is part of a bigger picture, while in the back of my head I'm solving challenges that have come our way that need to be circumvented for us to prevail. So while typically I'm able to do many things, the sign that she held up here is between two exceedingly bright lights. I think I have 9 brilliant lights that are staring me in the face as I have a laptop that's sitting beneath the camera that is providing the translations that I'm sharing with you, that helps me be accurate as I'm conveying God's testimony. So there's a lot going on. And understand, these are live streams. There's no pausing to say, oh, where were we? Or let me correct that. Or let's go in a different direction. Every one of these presentations, all 90 of them that have been prepared so far, they're all live streams. As you saw, I hit go on the computer. And here we are. There's no hiding. Yahweh likes it like that. Doesn't matter whether or not I like it like that. I'm certainly comfortable in that role. And he's made me comfortable in that role because of what sits behind me. These 30 some odd books. Took me 23 years to write the translations, and every translation I'm sharing with you, I have written. It's unlike any other translations that's ever been written previously. They're amplified translations that actually provide the basis of the Hebrew and the generic form that you can look up and verify for yourself, and that provides an amplification of the message so that you can learn even more from what God has to say. They are the most accurate and complete translations, and they are derived from the oldest extant sources. Nothing like them has ever been conceived previously. And by doing those over and over again now for 23 years, and then sharing the insights that can be derived from them, as we have devoted every aspect of this show, me going word for word and saying, this is what you can glean from this. Shabuah isn't the only harvest here. We're harvesting information. We're harvesting knowledge. We're gleaning what we can ultimately comprehend and understand, and therefore respond to in an intelligent way. And as a result of doing that, there are thousands, I would dare say tens of thousands of unique insights that I've shared in these books and now sharing as part of these programs that no one has thought of or conveyed to anyone, whether verbally or in writing, over the past 1,000, 2,000, in many cases, 3,000 years. So there's a lot going on here that I want you to know that I didn't wake up someday in December and decide, I think I'm going to start a YAHOWAH blog. And I'm going to share whatever comes to mind. No. This has been a long journey. I've invested the time. I have been a diligent student of Yahweh's testimony with an open mind. And I've come to the knowledge that I'm sharing with you over that time, constantly showing a willingness to scrub the indoctrination from our society away, which is central to coming to understand and know Yahweh. Constantly learning, constantly making connections, seeking the common denominator, making intelligent deductions, calculations, extrapolations, so that the picture fits together, so that you can perceive it as God intended. So for the first time ever, you're empowered and equipped and enlightened to make the most informed decision possible about your future, the future of your soul. That is why we're here. Kodesh means that what I'm sharing with you is uncommon. Yeah, it is so uncommon that virtually everything I'm conveying to you, including this definition of Kodesh, set apart, was previously unknown throughout thousands of years. The most prevalent forms of influences over humanity over these past 6,000 years have overwhelmingly been religion and politics, governance of some form, followed by militarism and the economic caste system. These are the things that have influenced our thinking, our society. Today, it's worse than ever. You have 2.5 billion Christians that believe that a crude counterfeit, someone who never actually existed, a mythical misnomer, was the Son of God and a Messiah and Savior, when Yahweh says, no, it's my son, though David, who was the Messiah and Son of God, and who fulfilled Pesach Matzah Bakodim to save you. And that these people have robbed God's chosen people, Yisrael, of the promises he made to them, claiming them for themselves. And then you have Judaism, which made a bad situation worse by countering the false Messiah of Christianity with a false Messiah of their own and causing the diaspora, leading to the Holocaust. And that's the founder of the Jewish religion, Rabbi Akiva. And then you have Islam, literally conceived by the adversary for the express purpose of exterminating Jews, declaring war on all humankind. And you have 2 billion of them. And then more recently, we've watched over the last 2 generations a group of people who now identify themselves as progressives. They're, I like to call libertards. It's halfway between liberal and retard. And I use that pejorative term because they have spurned evidence and reason. They're programmed. It's now a religious cult, a conspiratorial religious cult at that. That having eschewed evidence and reason and preferring to believe in their platitudes has aligned with the most evil religion in human history to denounce, demean, and exterminate God's people. They can't be reached. Words no longer matter to them. There's over 1 billion of them, 2 billion Muslims, 2.5 billion Christians. And then you have to add to that another probably billion people who would be either ultra right-wing in their politics, most of them wrapped up in all manner of conspiracy theories. Many of those blame the Jews. Can't reach them either. Evidence and reason means nothing to a conspiratorial advocate. They hate the wrong things. They believe in the wrong things. So ultimately, it's a very small audience that isn't, that I should say, that is Kodesh. That is wholly uncommon. To be wholly uncommon, to be Kodesh, to capitalize on a Moed Mikre, you have to eschew religion, politics, conspiracy, militarism. You have to be set apart from all of those things. You cannot be a progressive. You cannot be a Christian. You cannot be a Muslim. You cannot be a right-wing MAGAite wacko with your conspiracy theories. No, no, no. That's why the one prerequisite of the covenant is you must walk away from Babel, from this intermixing in Babylon of religion and politics. Got to walk away from the family of man. You must be uncommon. This day is for the uncommon, for those who are not religious, for those who are thinking as opposed to reactionary, for those who know the truth and are loyal to Yahweh, engaged in his covenant family. It is for those who are not political. It is for those who are not pro-military. I keep on begging Israel, and I've started this on 10/7 of 23. Israel, you need to learn who your enemy is, and it's not Hamas. They're just a symptom. And you need to know that when you're fighting a religious foe that has declared war on you and is trying to annihilate you and has been doing so for 1,400 years, you need to start using your brains instead of your bombs. As I pointed out, the average Muslim IQ is around 70. The average Jewish IQ is 115. God's people are equipped to win this battle if they fight it up here, which means they need to learn the truth about Islam and confront the religion straight on. Make it impossible to be a Muslim in a place where the truth is known by using your words. So set apart means that you are not part of the things that permeate humankind: religion, politics, militarism, economic schemes, particularly the caste system that has been so depriving of freedoms. That's what it means. You can engage in social media so long as your use of social media is productively to make God's people aware that he is returning with his son and that he has conditions of his covenant, and he's inviting you to attend these mikvahs. If you're using it to live some fantasy life or to spy on somebody else's fantasy life or to promote a conspiratorial agenda, then you're common too. If you spend your days playing video games, then you're common too. You can't participate. If you're disloyal to Yahweh and to his mission to call his people home, you're all too common. You're not welcome. So to be welcome, to attend this invitation, you need to be Kodesh. The next word is Mikra. It is the singular of Mikre, and it is an invitation to be called out and meet. It's a summons to bring us together to read and recite the written word, proclaiming it publicly while gathering. It is from Ma, to inquire about. Kara, being invited and summoned to meet, to be welcomed into God's company, to be called out of the world. And this is all designed, la atam, for us to approach. Marvelous, isn't it? Kara called out, Leviticus 23:21 in part. So now we know that each of the mikre, plural, of mikra, are defined by Kara, that they are set apart, which means they cannot be religious, they cannot be political, they cannot be common, and no one who is religious or political, the things that are most common among men, can participate. And that God is encouraging us to meet with him on these days. And that he is saying that our meeting with him on these days and on this day, Shabuah, is essential. You want to play I Dare You with God on it and pretend it's not? Or you could say, well, you said that you're the first to convey these words this way, and it's true. Maybe it's just essential for you to tell us these things this way. But if you were to go there, if it is just essential for me to share these words with you this way, what's the point if you don't listen and respond? Yahweh has made this, I think, relatively easy for us by explaining his terms. Shame that no one has bothered to think about them. Just think about things, for example, like estem, essential and foundational, and kodesh, set apart and uncommon. The juxtaposition between those things. Profound insights are derived when we understand these nuances. That's how the pieces of the puzzle come together. It gets framed appropriately and presented accurately to you. So, Mikra, we now know, is to be called out and meet, and it is based upon the verb kara, to invite, summons, call out, proclaim, read, recite, meet, welcome, in the context of God issuing this invitation for us to read and recite his word and to be welcomed into his company. God's message is clear. It is religious men and women who have muddled it with their religious holidays and their high holy days and their foolish replacements. And Shabuah is the one that was pilfered from God, from his people, and converted into Pentecost to proclaim the goddamn origins of a reprehensible Christian church that has tormented his people and led billions astray by robbing Yahweh's son, Dode, our Messiah and King, our Savior, the very Son of God by God's own admission, of all of his accolades and achievements, so that there is no means to salvation, no means to life, no means to perfection, no means to be part of God's family, no entrance into heaven, all because of what Christians and those promoting Judaism early on did to foist counterfeit messiahs on the world, hiding the truth beneath their religious rubbish. Now, I know this is a lot. I've said this before. It's a lot for you to process. I'm coming at you very forcefully with tons of information, and almost everything I'm saying is contrary to what you've been told to believe. And that's why it is so important that you show a willingness to disassociate from politics and religion, to open your mind to the realization that these things have put you in a very precarious situation, particularly if you're Jewish, and that it's going to get essentially infinitely worse over these next 8 years. And that the only answer over this entire time, from the time in Egypt to the Assyrian assaults, the Babylonian assaults, the conquests of the Macedonian Greeks, to the Imperial Romans, to the Roman Catholic Church, to the Ottomans, to the conquest of the first Muslims, to the Holy Roman Empire, to the pogroms and Holocaust that occurred because of anti-Semitism throughout Europe. United States at the time not giving a crap about Jewish lives. And now Islam again, and the amalgamation between progressives and Muslims. All of this is the result of you not listening to Yahweh. You are erasing his name from your lives. You're not being part of the covenant. You're not attending and accepting the invitations to benefit from the Moed Mikre. All of this mess is because while God chose you, you have not chosen him. And so it's time for you to look at where rejecting him, telling him to go away, I don't want to hear from you again, has brought you. What you have endured since you uttered those words, and have only doubled down on their intent since that time by being religious instead of growing in the relationship. What has it brought to you? Israel. Do you want more of the same? You know, they say that an IQ test, the average Jewish intelligence is 15 points higher than normal. 115 versus 100. And so you should be bright enough to figure this out. Insanity is when you repeat the same thing over and over again, as you have done for the past 3,000 years, and somehow expect a different result. Why don't you change your response and change the result? After all, you have Yahweh's word on it. With that thought, I'm going to conclude this episode of the Yahowah blog. I look forward to being with you again. I hope you were not too distracted by my attempt to be both host of this program for you and also a producer. But I'm going to turn now and try to stop this show. So excuse me as I turn away from you. It's not a sign that I am leaving you. I will be back, I promise, to continue the next episode of Qatsyr-Harvest. Thank you for listening.